Mushoku Tensei, also known as Jobless Reincarnation in the West, is originally a web novel published online by
Rifujin na Magonote.
that has since been adapted into a light novel, a manga, an audio drama, and finally an anime that is currently airing at the time of this recording and being produced by Studio Bind. There's a lot to talk about in regards to Mushoku Tensei, whether it be about its origins as the grandfather of Isekai, the complexity of its characters, the depth and detail put into its world, the gorgeous, breathtaking animation in its anime adaptation, or yeah. So if you're enjoying the anime now, then you have a whole lot more story to look forward to, as Season 1 Part 2 will likely finish the childhood arc of Rudeus' life, which is the end of Volume 6 out of the current 25 volumes published. Regardless of all that though, the thing I want to talk about today is Mushoku Tensei and its message of change. However, in order to fully discuss this topic, we will have to delve into some spoilers for anime watchers. Therefore, I recommend reading the light novel if you really don't want to be spoiled, as we'll be covering some events up to the end of Volume 15. But if you are a bit hesitant about reading the light novel, then just know that if you think the anime is a 9 out of 10, then the light novel is a solid 15. With all that said, let's start with the easiest example of this theme. That being our main protagonist, Rudeus Greyrat. At the start of the series, we are shown the life of a 34-year-old Japanese NEET. In today's modern anime scene, the idea of being a NEET has been glamorized as a cute quirk that might make a character more relatable or attractive. However, Mushoku Tensei doesn't take this approach and instead opts to present this lifestyle in an ugly manner. On top of all of this, Rudeus is a shut-in, someone who hasn't left their parents' home for nearly 20 years. He's become lazy and hopeless, and lives a lifestyle that can only be described as toxic and self-destructive. To be fair, the reason for this lifestyle in his previous life was because of some trauma that he received while attending high school. You see, before reincarnating, our protagonist actually had an alright life, being born into a well-off family, attending school, and even being praised for being a bright student. That changes once he enters into high school and becomes a victim of bullying. And not like regular bullying, but like severe bullying, to the point that he gets beat and hung up naked in front of the other students. This event is traumatic for him and he develops some serious PTSD. The problem is how Rudy allows his trauma to dictate the rest of his life and even corrupt his personality to some extent. You can see the result of living this kind of lifestyle, but his remaining relatives disown him and kick him out onto the street. And for good reason. Rudeus before reincarnating can only be called scum, leeching off his family's sense of goodwill, but not taking the time to even attend his parents' funeral. If you don't like Rudeus as your main protagonist right now, then that's good, because you're not meant to. The story intentionally makes Rudeus out to be a scumbag in order to better demonstrate its message of change. This isn't a story of zero to hero. It's a story about someone whose life seems hopeless, getting a second chance, and how the relationships and experiences of this new life help him grow into a better person. But that's not to say that Rudeus was a bad person prior to reincarnating. A total scumbag, yeah. A bad son, definitely. But he's not completely rotten. He does still try to save some people from being hit by a truck. Now that we've established what type of person Rudeus was before reincarnating, let's look at the type of person he becomes now that he's given a second chance at life. Yeah, change doesn't happen overnight. What does change Rudeus though, is when he first discovers magic. What magic is a hobby that Rudeus is passionate about. It's something that he can direct all of his time and energy into. You can see his passion for magic from how proactive he is in studying and learning more about it. And then when Rudy's parents discover his passion for magic, they actually go out of their way to hire Rudeus a new magic tutor. That tutor being Roxy. And what Roxy is another catalyst for change in Rudeus' life. She's the first person not a part of his family to praise and encourage him. She's a person who forces Rudeus to overcome his trauma of leaving the house and stop being a shut-in. The funny thing is that she doesn't even realise how significant this moment is for Rudeus. To her, she's just taking a student out to practice magic. But for Rudy, it's facing a lot of fears and insecurities with the comfort of knowing that someone important to him will be there for him. And what I kind of love about this moment is that it kind of reflects real life, in that it shows that it's not always the big, significant, drama-filled moments that can cause a person to change, but sometimes it's in the smaller, everyday moments where someone realizes that the thing that was bothering them wasn't all that big to begin with. And this isn't the only moment where we see Roxy helping Rudeus to change. Just her existence alone is enough to make him want to improve his magic skills. After Roxy leaving, Rudy begins to develop a friendship with Sylphie. And while this is by no means a bad thing, he begins to neglect his own magical training in favour of hers. He gets complacent, and it's only when he receives a letter from Roxy that he spurs to action, realising that he can do better. And funnily enough, it's Rudy's existence that motivates Roxy to improve and change. Before meeting Rudy, Roxy had been someone with a sense of arrogance due to her talent with magic. You can even see this during episode 1 of the anime, where she looks annoyed to be teaching a kid almost as if it's a waste of her talent. However, it's when that kid puts his own talent on display that Roxy realises that she's not as special as she once thought. And just like Roxy didn't notice she changed Rudy's life, Rudy doesn't even realise that his existence has instilled Roxy with a sense of humbleness. That and the fact that he helped her awaken to her passion of teaching. There's a few more ways that the two help each other to change, but it's really the moments in Rudy's early life that are the most significant. After Roxy comes Sylvie. Sylvie is Rudy's first friend in this world, his first student, and his first wife. Her existence changes Rudy's in a couple of ways. To begin with, Rudy learns how to apologise for his mistakes and that people have boundaries, after the incident of him mistaking her for a boy and forcibly stripping her. He learns how to become a teacher and a friend from spending time with her. He even develops a sense of responsibility, taking work as Eris's tutor in order to earn money for the both of them to attend Renoa Magic University. After the teleportation incident when the two reunite at the Magic University, Sylvie has changed dramatically and become the cool, silent Fitz, Ariel's bodyguard. She becomes more confident in herself and has even gained friends aside from Rudius. She's gone from being someone that relied on Rudius to someone that is reliable with themselves and is able to support others. Of course, not everything changes. As for how she changes Rudius post-teleportation incident, she cures Rudius's ED and helps him to overcome the trauma left by Eris. She tells him that she loves him and that she'll always be on his side, and this is a big deal for Rudius. He's never had a girlfriend or a partner or even a friend that stuck with him through it all. So when they sleep together for the first time and he panics that she'll leave just like Eris did, but she doesn't, it gives Rudy not just a feeling of security, but also teaches him what it's like to be loved in a romantic way and what it means to be in a relationship. Finally, we arrive at Eris, the egotistical, bratty Sundere noble who becomes Rudius' third knife and a sword king capable of even fighting world powers. In contrast to Rudius' other two wives, Eris is probably the person who changed Rudius the least, but instead changed herself the most because of Rudius. When we first meet Eris, aside from being a brat, she doesn't really see the purpose in bettering herself with studying, writing and arithmetic. She kinda sees herself as better than others, but with no basis other than being a nobleman's daughter. It takes Rudius' existence and a life-threatening event to humble her. It's in realising her own helplessness that she begins to take things seriously and try to actually improve herself. This feeling of helplessness carries over into her and Rudius' travels through the Demon Continent, as the scale and nature of their battles largen. And again, this helplessness pushes her to grow, which she does. She even becomes a fighter respected by veterans. But it's still not enough, and the moment that captures this best is after their fight with Orsted, when her and Rudy sleep together for the first time. This whole time, Rudy has been the amazing boy genius, the person Eris has been trying to catch up to, and it takes them lying in bed together for her to realise that Rudius is actually younger than her, and that she's been relying on him this whole time. And that's not what she wants. She wants to stand by his side and be his strength, and although the note she left resulted in Rudius gaining some new trauma, this is actually a pretty mature move on Eris' behalf. And so the hot-headed nobleman's brat gains a bit of maturity and a purpose. As for how she changes Rudy, she does give him a new trauma to overcome, but also a job, which is a pretty big deal considering the show is called Jobless Reincarnation, and with the job comes a sense of responsibility and purpose. To double down on this theme of change, we have Chad, Sigma Male, Dragon God Orsted. With his time-looping curse, he directly tells us how Rudius' existence has changed not just the people close to him, but the world itself. Originally in the world where Rudius doesn't exist, Eris would have married Luke and only achieved the rank of Sword Saint, Roxy would have never married and would be the teacher of Sylvie, and Sylvie would have become an adventurer, famous for exploring the world's dungeons. All of these characters are changed by meeting Rudius. For this next part of the video, we're going to be talking about one of the most important moments that happens in the story. I know that I already said that I'd be spoiling the story so I could speak freely, but this is a serious spoiler. This does not take place in season 1 of the anime, and it's something that we probably won't see animated until the end of season 2. You have been warned. Alright, let's recap what we've discussed so far. Rudius was a shut-in, loner NEET before reincarnating, but once given a second chance at life, he begins to change and gradually becomes a better person. Roxy helps him to overcome his trauma of being a shut-in, Sylvie teaches him what it's like to have friends and be in love, and Eris gives him a job and a sense of responsibility. Looking at this, it's obvious how Rudy has changed, but there's still one aspect of his former self that he hasn't properly faced yet. In fact, there's one more character who changes Rudius significantly that we haven't even mentioned. Can you guess who it is? What if I told you that this character is someone who's a bigger scumbag than Rudius? What about if I told you that when we first meet this character, that they're in the middle of their own arc? This person's arc isn't really explained to us, but by following the story, we're able to piece their history and relationships together. What if I told you that it's Rudius, who actually helps this person to complete their arc, and that it's only at the end of this character's arc that Rudius is able to become a man? The character I'm talking about is none other than Paul Greyrat. During Rudy's childhood, living in the village, we are introduced to the character of Paul, and we quickly come to realise that he's a person with a lot of flaws. His most notable flaw being that he's a bit of a perv, a trait that we also see in Rudius. It's for this reason that Rudius doesn't see Paul as a parent, but actually as someone who's the same type of man as him. As the story progresses, we hear from characters in the world that Paul's pervy traits have gotten him into trouble and even caused rifts with the members of his previous party. Heck, we even see him get into trouble when he sleeps with Lilia, which almost causes his family to be torn apart. This is also an example of how Rudius is kind of a saviour to Paul, and how he managed to keep their family together and give Paul a second chance. When Rudius leaves the village to become a tutor for Eris, we don't see Paul for a while, and when we finally reunite with him, it's not the Paul that we once knew. This Paul is someone who has devoted the last 2 years of their life searching for his family. This is a person who's fallen into depression and alcoholism due to his inability to find his family. You've got to remember that Paul has just had 2 daughters at this point, and although he was teleported along with Norn, he still has to stress about whether Lilia, Zenith and Aisha are okay. The only person he's not worried about is Rudius, because in his mind, Rudius isn't a child, but a person capable of defending himself. So when their paths finally cross again, and Paul hears that Rudius's mind hasn't been filled with the same concern for their family as him, it infuriates him. But more than that, it disappoints him, and this fight between father and son changes them. Rudius realizes that Paul is right to an extent, and that he hasn't really thought about his family's safety, and that he's been taking his journey all too lightly. It's after this encounter that he begins to take this journey a lot more seriously, and reconsiders the importance of family in his life. On the other hand, Paul recognizes his own self-destructive behavior, and that this isn't the way he should be treating his son. Thankfully, the two manage to apologize and come to view each other in a new light, each growing a little in the process. When we next meet Paul, it's been another 4 years, and Rudius has grown considerably. He's married, has a child on the way, and has matured greatly. As for Paul, even he's grown notably, having stopped drinking and acting out from the stress of the situation. This time, when they reunite, things go a lot better. They sit and talk about what's happened over the last few years. Rudy tells Paul about Norn, Aisha, that he's married, and that Paul will be a grandfather soon. It's clear that Rudius has become a man in the time since he's last seen Paul. And while this makes Paul proud, it also brings back memories of his failures as a father. When they finally set out on their expedition to save Zenith, Rudius' competency is on full display. Whether it be his knowledge of the dungeon, his magical prowess, or even his ability to keep a level head. It's clear to everyone that Rudius will be the reason for their success. So it's kind of bittersweet every time Paul praises Rudy or tells everyone how great he is, because you can see that he's blaming himself for not having done anything father-like for Rudy. At the climax of this arc, the party faces off against the Hydra, and with the combined efforts of everyone there, they manage to win the battle. But victory comes at a price. That price being Paul's death. This is the most significant moment in the story that I was talking about earlier. In saving Rudy, Paul is finally able to do something father-like for Rudius, and die while knowing that Zenith is safe, thus completing his arc. A lot of people dislike Paul, and to be honest with you, I get it. Paul in his younger days was definitely a scumbag, but he was designed to be this way. You're not meant to think highly of Paul. You're not meant to aspire to be like him. Heck, even Rudius admits it. That guy. He was by no means a praiseworthy guy at all. He was a scumbag philanderer and an egotistical show-off. He was weak to adversity and quick to escape to the bottle. Surely, as material for a father, he would be disqualified. But I loved him. But Paul changes. Just like everyone else in this series, he changes and becomes a better person in the process. He recognizes his failures as a friend and a father, but works to be better. He apologizes to Ellen Lees, he apologizes to Rudy, he saves the 2 other girls, he stops drinking, he stops cheating on his wives, he risks his life for his family, he even leads the Renoa region search party, saving victims of the teleportation incident. Paul isn't a good person, but he tries to be a good father, and it's in being a better father that he becomes a better person. With that said, Paul's death is significant for Rudius, in how it makes him re-examine his views on family. And by family, I'm not just talking about Paul, but his parents from his previous life. Remember how we talked about how Rudy in his previous life was a shut-in NEET who didn't even attend his parents' funeral? Well, now Rudy is filled with regret and understands his failures as a son in his past life. And then there was me. Me who didn't even attend their funeral. What was I even thinking? To not even gather their bones of my parents? What on earth was I thinking? Why? Why did I not even go to their funeral? This is a regret that cannot be fixed. He knows that he will never have the chance to visit the grave of his old parents, of his old family. But he also knows the importance of family in this life, and finds redemption in cherishing them. This time, Rudius doesn't make the same mistake as his previous self and visits Paul's grave. He mourns for him and continues to use him as a role model for fatherhood as he becomes a parent. He does the things that Paul would have done if he was still alive, and cherishes his sisters and mothers in his place. He grows and becomes a better person than Paul ever was. With this, Rudius completed his arc from a deplorable NEET to that of a respectable young man, which funnily enough coincides with the ending of the adolescence period in the light novels and start of the young man period. And to top it all off, throughout this whole period of growth to manhood, we've seen him overcome the traumas and mistakes of his previous life. This whole narrative has been a coming of age story from the beginning. Not about a boy to a man, but an emotionally stunted man-child to an adult, and then as an adult, facing and changing the world around him, trying to make it just a little bit better for the people he loves. And it's not just Rudius that changes. All these characters change and grow as people, just like everyone in real life does. Some of these changes are big, and some of these changes are small, but everyone changes undeniably. I could talk about Mushoku Tensei all day. There are so many themes that play in this series, whether it be about denying faith in God, about relationships and morals, themes of forgiveness and self-improvement. The characters are complex, the world is rich with detail, the girls are cute, it's got action, it's got romance, it's got comedy, it's even got a little bit of ecchi for you degenerates out there. I have in no way covered all that this story has to offer, and even the things I've talked about could be explored in way more depth, but if I did that, this video would probably be 2 hours long. What I'm trying to say is that Mushoku Tensei is a series that I really enjoy. It's a series that teaches us that it is possible for a person to change, but change takes time. Rudius doesn't just become a better person because he's reincarnated. He becomes a better person through the accumulation of experiences and relationships in his life over a long period of time. And change doesn't mean becoming a completely new person. Rudius is still Rudius at the end of the day. And that's what I think the message of this series is. No matter someone's past or mistakes, they can grow. They can change. You can change. It might take some time, and it might take some effort, but it's possible. People can change. For the better. Yo! Thank you for watching the video, and I hope you enjoyed it. This is my first time making a video like this. I've always really wanted to learn how to edit videos, and Mushoku Tensei is a series that I really do enjoy. So just mixing those two things together, and this is the product that I got. I was actually surprised at how much fun I had making this video. I kind of want to try making more videos in this kind of style. Maybe a little less scripted and a little less scuffed. So even though this video was a little bit scuffy, I will try to do better for the next few. Once again, I just wanted to say thanks, and I'll see you next time, I guess. Bye!